What's up to all of my book-loving magician friends out there? My name is Jeff Kowalk, and you are watching Erudite Magic. So what do we have in store for you today? Normally when you do a book review or you're talking about magic books, books can be broken down into simple categories like theory or tricks. And now I'm introducing that third category, reference works. Every library needs some kind of reference work. The value in a reference work in your library is that it allows you to do one-stop shopping for whatever topic it is you're talking about, which we've talked about in previous videos. Enough with all this, let's get into what we're here for today. Many of you may be familiar with the name Jim Kleefeld. Jim's a magician near Cleveland, Ohio, and he was a school teacher and has performed now for many years. He also has a mentalism storytelling type show, but all that's irrelevant to you. What is relevant to you is that he has written some books. A while back, he wrote a book called Locked, which was about lock routines, trick locks, everything. He has written a new book in 2020, dun, da, 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 and it is the book test book. So in addition to the review this week, I'm also going to highlight some of my favorite book tests, including ones that you can be performing pretty quickly. I don't normally do this. Because we're talking about book tests, I feel like it's okay, and because we're discussing the book test book, I want to go ahead and throw out some recommendations so there's something for everyone in this video. Before we get into this, what is a book test? As the author himself points out, a book test is really a word test for the most part. Someone picks up a book, looks at a word, thinks of that word, and you read their mind. I personally perform one of these type effects in my show. It is highly effective and never fails to get a great reaction from an audience. And I think that magicians and mentalists have realized this since book tests started to come out, which is why there are so many out there. Now, there have been all kinds of marketed products, routines, books about the subject, magazine articles, any way you can think of to have a participant think of a word in their head and for you to pluck that from their head or predict it in advance. Magicians have been thinking about this for decades, and that's what Jim is covering in this book. So what is the book test book? Well, by its very nature, he tells you that it is not encyclopedic. But really, the only reason it's not encyclopedic is that it's not completely comprehensive. As the author points out at the very beginning of the book, it's basically impossible to cover every single book test that's ever out there. There have been book tests almost as long as there have been books. But this is the most complete collection about book tests you'll ever see. Let's get into some of the details. So what is this book? In essence, it is Jim Kleefeld's attempt to cover the most important aspects of book tests. So he's going to go over things like methods. In fact, the breakdown of the book is primarily driven by method. He overviews them at the beginning, and then he gives you a very complete listing of all the different book tests from both magazines, books, and marketed items that use these methods. He's going to go over all kinds of methods in here, everything from word forces to book forces, stooges, anagrams, peaks, finding out information. It's pretty much all covered in here. And the beauty of it is that it comes from a wide variety of sources, so you're not going to be forced into buying all kinds of book tests if you want to be up and performing a book test. Who's this for? This is a professional reference guide. So if you're a casual performer and you're not serious about finding the right book test for you, I'm going to tell you this book is probably not going to be for you. It's somewhat pricey, but if you're a professional who is working to include something in your act or to discover what's going to work for you, think of this as an investment in that, and as part of your research, I think it's well worth it. Before you click end video, recognize that this book will teach you lots of methods for performing a book test, including divulging many of the methods behind the popular book tests out there, whether that was published in a book or magazine, or if it's a separately marketed item. I think Jim does a great job of giving you enough information to make a good decision and not divulging too much of the details that are being sold with the product. The book contains essays on the history of book tests. How did we come up with this idea as magicians? What are some of the milestones where new things that shaped the future of book tests came along? And then within each section, he's broken it down by method. So within the method, it's then more or less chronological throughout that method. The other really cool thing about the reference aspect of this is that he tells you where each one is from, and he's got a convention so that if it's from a magazine like the Gen or the Jinx or the Phoenix, he has pictures that show you immediately where that book test can be found. So if you own a good reference library and you pick this book up, you're going to have an easy time looking through the methods, finding one that works for you, and then immediately going to the reference in that periodical or book so that you can find it and start performing it. If you don't own a big library, the book's probably not for you to begin with, but that doesn't mean you won't find some value in here. He is going to give away enough of the methods from versions that were published in magazines or books that you could probably work it out on your own to make that work. But if you don't have things like the Jinx or some other books on mentalism, I think you're going to struggle to present this effectively. Bottom line is, it is designed mostly for professionals, but if you're a serious amateur and you do perform some shows, I think it could be great to help you figure out what methods might work for you in your situation before you spend your hard-earned cash. The book clocks in at 300 pages approximately, and there are 3 different indices about the effects, principles, and creators. This book is going to tell you everything you need to know about book tests and help you find one that will work for you. And if you're a book test junkie, you already know you're going to be buying all of them anyway. But because we're in the parameters of book tests, I feel it's appropriate if I share with you some ideas to get you started in case you're just getting into this. One of my favorite tests is the Glance magazine test put out by Vanishing Ink. I actually carry this with me in my work bag or in my desk at work. There's some really nifty ways that you can dress this up if you have an old magazine label from some other periodical to which you're subscribed. You can slap that on to one of these magazines and it really just gives it a better look. The beauty of this test is there's not a lot to remember, and it's inexpensive enough that if you kind of wear out the magazines, you don't feel terrible about having to buy new ones. But these will last you a long time. I have had my copies of Glance for years. Easy to do. There's a crib to remember everything, so even if your memory's not great, you'll be able to perform this, and I'm telling you, it always gets great reactions. You just need to have the right presentation, which is always on you. Probably the most classic book test of which I'm aware is found in The Bold and Subtle Miracles of Dr. Faust. Dr. Faust was the performance persona of David Hoy. Now, an interesting bit of trivia here. I actually went to the same college as David Hoy. True story. If you know what college we both attended, drop it in the comments down below. Just a little trivia for you. Anyway, on page 21 is the Bold book test, which is a classic method. And I got to tell you, Magic Ink has put out this pamphlet. It is very inexpensive, and there may even be a PDF version. There are 2 tricks in here that make it worth the price alone: the tossed out deck and the Bold book test. Those 2 alone would be awesome numbers in any mentalism show, even today. Now, once you get into it, you're going to find other applications and you're going to want to research it further, but the minimal investment in this booklet will pay big dividends. Highly recommended. Larry Becker's Ultimate Flashback. Larry Becker needs no introduction if you are a mentalist. This book test puts a number of principles together. It's becoming much harder to find, but I found a used copy very inexpensively, and it came with like 5 books to perform the test. Are you guys ready for my favorite impromptu book test? It is the Mark Paul AAA book test. Now, I know that Illusionist has sold a download of this. That's fine. I've not seen the download, so I can't really comment on the quality of it. What I can tell you is that if you buy Mark Paul's Penguin Live, the first one, he teaches the AAA book test with a whole host of other tremendous stuff. Now, I don't normally recommend downloads or videos, but I'm telling you that if you're into book tests, the AAA book test is fantastic. It's the one that I perform if I'm at somebody's house. It can be done impromptu with pretty much any book, and this effect is just tremendous. Any book, anybody's house, and you can do a book test. Do a little bit of reading or watching Max Maven. There are a number of tests that can be done with just regular paperback books. David Regal has some good ideas in his books. So again, I'm pointing you back to books so that you can research book tests further, because it's an immensely deep pool of information, which is why a book like the book test book will help you sort through that if you're willing to pony up the money. The other brothers have put out Words Beyond, a book test. I've used this one, and again, it's inexpensive enough that you don't need to feel bad about buying it, throwing it in a bag or your car or wherever it is that you're going to go. Have it with you, and you're always ready to perform something with it. And if it gets beat up, well, that just adds to the character and makes it seem less special. If you're a serious professional, the mother of all book tests is highly recommended. It's just great. It's not cheap, but I like that because it keeps away people who are not serious about honing in their presentation. If you can afford it though, I don't want to say it can't be beat. There are a lot of great book tests out there, and this will help you pick one for you, but it is very versatile. It has so many methods built in, and all it's waiting for is a great presentation from a charismatic performer. Let's talk quickly about cost. The book test book is $125 for the standard edition. So it's probably priced to keep the curious amateur away from it. The production values are extremely high. You got full color pictures throughout. He's given you the dimensions of every book test that is a product, even some that are just found in books. He's given you dimensions. He's told you what kind of method it uses. He even has some presentations in here based on the type of book test or method there. The beginning of each chapter on method gives you a, I'll call it bare bones presentation, although he does have a dedicated section in here about presentations and how to effectively administer a book test, including how to pick the people to participate, your energy, pacing. There's a lot built into here. Finally, there is also a book test built into the book test book. I don't want to give it away. I personally thought it was overkill, but it is there. I would probably never alert people to the fact that there is a book test in performing it, so I would never really use that feature. But it does have a book test built in just for fun, I think. So what more is there to say about this? I'm not really sure that what more could be said. You want to be performing a book test, and I hope I've given you some good ideas here. I highly recommend that you check out the book test book by Jim Kleefeld. It's a good investment to help you hone in on what you want to do, find some presentations. Book tests are so versatile. It's really easy to, once you know some methods, come up with your own presentation, which is what I've done. I perform a book test in pretty much all of my shows, and if I do an impromptu show, you already heard me reference I use Mark Paul's AAA book test, which is highly effective, easy to do, and powerful. If you're getting value out of watching this channel and seeing these reviews, please consider liking this video and subscribing so that you don't miss any of our future content. If you don't like what I'm doing here, feel free to click the thumbs down button and drop a comment as to what you'd like to see. If you have any comments or questions, drop them down in the comments below. You know I'm an open book. Until next time, all my erudite friends, keep reading.